This is the Hope Not Note podcast,
where we answer your questions and share inspirational stories to fill your soul with hope.
Our mission is to empower hope to those who have been plagued by note.
I'm Dr. Dylan Caswell.
And I'm Brandy.
And we're here to bring you out of the note and into hope.
Welcome to the Hope Not Note podcast. Thank you so much for tuning in. We're thrilled to be with you. Our question this week is from a listener named Jason. And he says, I started training years ago to help with different life stressors, but now I'm overwhelmed with the high expectations of life and training. Should I just give up on training altogether?
Oh, I think we've all been there.
Yeah.
We've all been there. And this generally happens, I feel like, during transitions. And I don't know if Jason's going through a transition of like college sports to now being done with college sports. Maybe like didn't go professional, is now taking a full-time job and trying to keep a high-level goal, or this is typically during a transition time, or like a couple that's having a new baby,
right?
Where, it's like, I have this, I'm doing an Ironman. Well, can you do that on 2 hours of sleep a night because this newborn baby is in the other room crying? So this is typically during transition times, which are overwhelming to begin with. Then you add on almost this concept of feeling like you're failing, and you feel like you're failing in one domain, but then that trickles into the next domain and the next domain, and then all of a sudden you start to feel this spirit of failure across everything, and it becomes even more frustrating, just kind of adds fuel to the fire. So what I want to say, Jason, is no, don't give up the training.
Yeah.
Don't give up the ship. And I'm going to use an analogy that actually Jason and Lauren Pack
that's fitting.
use because they're awesome.
Yeah.
But they talk about dimmers instead of switches. So you hit a light switch, light goes out. A dimmer keeps the light on, but just changes the intensity of it. And that's exactly what needs to happen here. It's adjusting and adapting, adjusting and adapting, adjusting and adapting.
Adjusting and adapting.
Adjusting and
adapting.
You got it. Adjusting and adapting. So what does that look like? Well, adjusting might be looking at your training schedule. And this is what we would call the external load, the stressors that you're taking on, and seeing what in there am I able to adjust. Maybe it's a newer job, or it's a promotion, or it's something that you're not able to change at work. Like you just know that for the next X amount of time that like the work stressors are going to be high. So we have to start looking at, well, okay, what other stressors can we then decrease? Not get rid of, but what can we decrease? And training may be one of those things of what are you training for? What competition you're going for? When is that coming up? Do you need to be peaking right now? Or can we take the foot off the gas pedal a little bit and then build it back up when work stressors aren't as high or family stressors aren't as high? So we can start looking holistically across each domain of wellness for you and saying, what dimmers can we adjust in here so that you can keep moving, right? Because consistency is key. And granted, like, hey, adjusting it's going to change the intensity. It shouldn't change the consistency of that. So we want to look at that for the adjusting. The adapting, that's your internal load. How does your being adapt to the stressors that you're placing upon it? So what's nutrition like? What's sleep like? What are you doing to fuel yourself over and over and over again? And not just like, we're not talking about calories. Calories are important, but like, what are the things that are helping you recover? And, we live in this world where, gosh, the wellness industry is spiking to have projected income more than big pharma.
Jeez.
And right, so you go on social and it's all this FOMO that, oh, if you're not cold plunging, you're not recovering. If you're not doing saunas, you're leaving potential on the table. All those things are very, very low on the list compared to sleep, compared to community, and to feeling fulfilled. So I also want to have that conversation with Jason of like, hey, how are you adapting to these stressors? What are you putting first that maybe should be put last? And how do we start to tweak that list so that you can adapt better to things as you adjust them?
I also think that with feeling overwhelmed, I know for myself, when I feel overwhelmed, it's almost like I start to lose or at least I think I start to lose or my sense of self-agency. Dylan does, if you're watching on YouTube, Dylan always does this face if I'm like, "Oh, I'm feeling overwhelmed." He just like makes himself look super tired and like
Very underwhelming.
very underwhelming, and it always like cracks me up. But I know like for myself, and I also have multiple friends that when they feel so overwhelmed, it's like they lose their sense of self-agency.
Mm,
And I think that if that's where you're struggling, Jason, where you're like almost like starting to feel like you're losing that self-agency, the adjusting and adapting are great tips to remind yourself that you do have a choice in all of this and that you do have self-agency. And I think that that can be very, very helpful. I also want to look at the specific language he used with like high expectations.
mm,
You mentioned like, is it work stressors? Is it life stressors in the midst of transition? Did you just have like a newborn baby? All these different things. But let's look at what high expectation is and who is placing that expectation on you. Is it yourself? Is it your spouse? Is it just like, is it your work? Like, yes, there's stress at work, but there's also like the high expectation at work. Like where is that high expectation coming from? And can that also be adjusted?
yeah,
You know?
yeah, 100%. Because, right, when reality doesn't match that expectation, disappointment occurs.
Hmm.
And one of the main things we know with hope is that hope does not disappoint. So if you're feeling disappointed, the expectations aren't matching reality. And we have to start getting into that conversation as well as, well, what are those expectations? And then realistically, do you have a framework that's getting you closer to that?
Hmm.
Or is this framework just kind of stacking volume on top of it? We see it so many times with athletes that are in these high volume based programs. And when we look at the science for trained athletes, they don't need a ton of sets of things. They don't need a 10 by 10,
No.
you know, even a 6 by 12. Like a trained athlete, they need a little bit less to
Yeah.
keep what they've gotten. And that's like, that's awesome because it's, hey, that time can now be spent in other places.
Hmm.
You know, you probably don't need a 2.5 hour workout, 45 minutes to an hour with a well-programmed workout is going to get you there.
Hmm.
Again, depending on what your goal is,
Right.
and I look at it too. And, if I think it's hard to carry a full-time job, have a high athletic goal, and have family responsibilities. But again, you have to start looking at these and realistically start to prioritize. Like,
Hmm.
what is number one, what's number two, and what's number three? How much attention is number one getting? How much is number two getting? How much is number three getting? When you have your priorities and then you look at it and you go, well, this is my number one priority, but I'm spending the least amount of time on that thing.
Hmm.
Well, now you start to realize why you're not adapting well. Your spirit's not being filled. But when you have that number one thing, like this is my number one priority, and I'm doing the activities and the actions and the practices that are related to that priority, well, now my spirit's filled and now I'm able to take on more. And
Hmm.
now this momentum builds and now I'm excited to keep going
Hmm.
for those next things.
Yeah, so I think simply, like said simply, should you give up training altogether? No, you shouldn't. And clearly training is a part of who you are as a person. And it sounds like if you're asking this question, like it has given you sparks in the past. And so these tips that we've shared in this episode, like hopefully that can get you back to remembering those sparks, allowing your training to continue to spark you, but then also looking at all the different areas in your life and where adjusting and adapting can be used.
Yeah, 100%. Hope story time.
Hope story
Yeah, kick
time.
us off.
Okay, so I'm really excited to share this. When I was growing up, I played basketball. I started basketball in the backyard, as all kids do, right? And uh, got swatted by my brother on a regular basis. And we used to play like pig or around the world or knockout with the neighbors, and I would lose a lot. But I loved basketball growing up, so much so that when I started playing like for our school in third grade, by the time fifth grade came, I said I wanted to be in the WNBA. I'm 5'4", not I'm good. I'm good at basketball, but I'm not like I didn't play at college or anything. Like WNBA is not happening. But all that to say, I'm really excited because the basketball program that I grew up with wasn't we didn't have a winning record by any means. Like I remember some of my teams losing like 50, 60, 70 plus to like less than 10 multiple times from like seventh grade through high school. So I'm really excited to share that the high school that I went to, the girls' women's basketball team just won their district championship, which basically is like once you win that, then you go into state playoffs.
Mm.
And not only did they win it, but they currently have an undefeated season. And
Wow.
like, I'm just so excited. I know I don't really know. I've been out of school for over a decade, so I don't like know the players and things like that, but I know the head coach because I went to church with him growing up. And so like him and his wife, I've known my entire life. And so it's just really cool to see him coaching. I never got to have him as a coach, but watch it like seeing him coach and have this accomplishment is just so cool. And then I'm not there. I don't get to go to the games, but like my brother texting me and telling me all the different things is just really awesome. So I feel this like hometown pride right now
Aw.
for my school.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, I'm gonna switch my hope story and kind of just ride your curtail with that one.
Okay.
So I'll stick with the basketball thing and hometown. So the high school I went to is traditionally not known for having a good basketball program.
Mhm.
They were once known for having a really good wrestling program, and that's kind of shifted. Similar to my theory in college sports,
Mm.
that it's very rare to have a good football and basketball program at the same time. As one builds, the other one decreases.
Yeah.
The only exception that I know is the University of Florida that won the national championship in football and in basketball in the same year.
Yeah.
That is like the only one that I know has defied it.
Hmm.
But for example, Alabama basketball is improving.
Hmm.
Alabama football
On the
is on the
decline. Yes.
decline. So anyway, the school I went to is really known for wrestling, and then we once in a while have a cohort that would come through of really talented athletic dudes that will go on these winning streaks in
Hmm.
basketball. And my nephew's now up onto the varsity team, and they made a run to the Final Four in sectionals.
Hmm.
They beat was it the two seed,
Hmm.
and then got into the semifinal, and they ended up losing in the semifinal, but they're one game away from
Hmm.
playing in the sectional final
Right.
out of like a 20 team bracket, which is awesome. And the best part is they're young. They're
Yes. Yeah.
young, like they're going to be able to make some noise if they keep putting in the work and kind of get
Hmm.
to that next level that they have. But it's fascinating watching, they're freshmen, sophomore, and juniors,
Hmm.
and I had one senior on the team, but watching like the young ones play and knowing that wow, they still got time to develop. It's like they,
Yeah.
they can do something exciting similar to what your school's doing right
Yeah.
now.
Yeah, the cool thing about both like the high school that I went to and the high school you went to is with these current programs, they're not losing a lot of seniors. And so there's a girl on the basketball team where I went to, the high school I went to, who is only a junior and she's currently, I think, the fifth leading scorer
Wow.
of all time in the district, meaning that like she's already passed current WNBA players in
Hmm.
the leading scoring of all time, and she's only a junior. Like
Wow.
it's really exciting to see what she can continue to blossom into for the rest of this season as they make a state run, but then also into next year as well. And I think similar to you, like there's his high school has, yes, juniors starting, but there's even like freshmen and sophomores who are starting like on the starting, not just on varsity, but like in the starting five. Like they're the ones who are playing most of the game, and it's really exciting to see. Like there's like great anticipation I feel like we both have for our like
Yeah.
hometowns right now, which is really cool to see.
Yes, absolutely. All right, wrap it up.
Wrap it up.
Wrap it up. Thank you for listening. And remember, every day is not just a day to be hopeful, but an opportunity to become hope.
The Hope Not Know podcast is meant for educational, informational, and personal development purposes only and does not constitute any health or medical advice. If you're looking for specific advice, connect with us to work with a Hope coach. The Hope Not Know podcast shall not be liable or responsible for any loss or damage allegedly arising from any information or suggestions in this podcast.